Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Make sure you like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please rate this podcast 5 stars where applicable, and leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Hey, welcome back to our midweek session. We had to get resolutions done and out of the way as our annual meetings are coming up. So we came in on a Wednesday night to get these done. We've got our usual selves here today, myself and Bill and Mike and Josh and James. So we're going to start right off the bat with what is a resolution? For the purpose of NRLCA members, a resolution is defined as a member's right to participate in the organization and have their individual voices heard. Taking one individual idea of a formal expression of an opinion, will, or intent and having it voted on by an official body or assembled group. That is basically what a resolution is. And who can submit a resolution? Being a member of the organization provides one of the most fundamental rights of a member, the right to voice their opinions in the affairs of the organization. By doing so, the member must realize their responsibility for the process and use it with the integrity with which it has been designed. When should a resolution be submitted? After a member has fully researched any applicable issues related to the opinion or idea that they have, and it depends on what kind of issue the resolution is intended to address. Where is a resolution first submitted? A member's idea should be first presented at the lowest level of the organization, local unit or state level. Reference is how a bill becomes a law. Why should a resolution be presented? This is the voice used in shaping the organization and its goals as a whole, to bring light to an issue that will have a positive impact on the organization. And then the important one, how do I submit a resolution? The appointed resolution committee, the process identified in each state does have its own process on how resolutions are submitted. Whereas and be it resolved, the two kinds of resolutions are binding and non-binding. Binding, defined as the board has the sole authority to implement, does not have to negotiate with another party, and the issue will not harm the organization as a whole. A non-binding, defined as an idea that must be negotiated with another party and therefore cannot guarantee the implementation. The areas in which a resolution can reach are administrative, contractual, legislative process reminders, quality versus quantity, intent clarified, not a complaint process, and not to be confused with the Constitution change process. What happens to a passed resolution? At the local level, it passed, it goes to the next level. And in state, if it's passed, goes to the next level. National, the board reviews all the resolution issues prior to the next negotiations and assesses the possibility of its real outcome. The only exception is if the resolution of an issue was intended to be implemented at the level at which it was passed. Alright, resolutions, number 1, normally start at your local level. I do know some states don't have district meetings or local, some of the smaller states, therefore it's submitted at the state level. I do believe New Hampshire, I heard, was one of those. And ideally they're submitted at your annual local meetings, voted upon there. Once, if approved, they then move up to your state convention to be voted on by the delegation at state convention. If it is a national resolution and it is passed, it then gets put in to go and be presented at the National Convention for voting on by that delegation. You can do state resolutions as well. Normally a lot of those are constitutional for your state constitution. And they would stop, obviously, at the state level if it is a state resolution. Easiest way to remind it is a binding would be a constitutional resolution, as in that's something that the party can implement the sole authority and doesn't have to negotiate with USPS. Non-bindings would be contractual, as they would have to be negotiated with USPS. James, you got more input?
Yeah, and you want to make sure that what you are working on is one or the other, because when you submit it, then you're going to be evaluated on it first to see if it's a good resolution to put forth. If there's inaccuracies in it, like you put binding on something that's not a constitution, then they will throw it out in the committee that reviews your resolutions. The biggest thing about it is if you want something to change, you want to look into what it is you want to change first. See if there's wording in there that actually makes the change already available or not.
Resolutions in a whole, you have to remember, have to affect the craft in a whole. If it's something that pertains to your office, it's not going to be a resolution. If it's something that's...
And it's probably not going to get enough traction to go past your local or state.
Exactly. You got to remember the craft as a whole when looking at especially non-binding resolutions. I'm trying to think if I have examples of non-binding are pretty much anything that you want to see negotiated within contracts. Binding resolution, constitutional-wise, that could be anything from... Oh, we had an example.
I got an example.
Go ahead.
I got an example. So a binding resolution would be you want to have the secretary go from part-time to full-time, like Michigan did.
Mm-hmm.
And a non-binding would be you want to have a pizza party one Thursday every month for every carrier, every office in the United States.
I don't know how well that one would go, but yeah.
Well, they like pizza parties better than raises.
Yeah. Another one would be, for example, James had that. He was known for that 3-page resolution that made it all the way to national last year from the state level that everybody just didn't bother looking at because it was 3 pages long, but it was actually a management accountability program. And unfortunately gained absolutely no traction whatsoever at national.
The only reason why they didn't want to read it is because I put in all the stipulations of how everything was to work in that, instead of just putting a resolution that we need to track management through the grievance process. Every grievance gets a point value to it and tracks management, and that's what the whole resolution was about. But I wrote it thinking I could create an entire resolution that fills a single role, and unfortunately, when you're at a national level and you have thousands of resolutions pouring through the resolution committee, it's kind of hard to have them go over something like that and pass it on with proper review, I should say, before everybody decides to vote on it.
Or you can have a binding resolution like mine where we give the national steward system back to the states, and that gets shot down at the state level real quick.
That's because nobody wants to deal with you, Bill.
Really, I mean, the national steward system is its own political force inside our union. I mean, you've got people out there 20 plus years that haven't carried around. You've got people that are ADRs because, they support the DRs above them. It's not about that. It's about what kind of job you do. We have an ADR in our area. She's full time, and she gives the best training sessions in the world. But the DR above her is so entrenched up National's ass that you need a backhoe to pull them out. The politics have to go.
I agree.
Yeah, we all agree on that. Politics has no place within our union. We need to work for each other, not against each other.
Yep.
One craft, one people, one voice.
Yeah, some of the common subjects covered by a constitution, or which would be a binding resolution, would be membership and dues, state associations, national officers, steward system, and appeals. On your resolution form, it comes up with you have to check the appropriate box, whether it's binding or non-binding. And then you have issues. The issues that they have out are automation, benefits, EMA, grievance procedures, leave replacements, mail count, relief day, retirement, salary, time standards, vehicle, work rules, other, and constitution, obviously. You're only going to put one resolution on per sheet. New language is supposed to be bold. Omitted language would be strike through. So if you're looking at either both non-binding or binding, if you're looking to change the wording, you're going to strike through the original language and then indicate if the resolution is intended to be binding or non-binding, indicate the issue the resolution concerns, and then identify any handbooks, manuals, or written documents to be amended. And then you'd put in the name of the document, the article, the section, and the paragraph. Explanatory paragraphs should be headed as follows. If the space below is inadequate, or use additional sheets. This is coming right off of the resolution form. So proper submission of resolutions would definitely, like say, if you're looking to change language, you're going to have the original language, but then you're going to strike through it. This is where being typed out really helps rather than handwritten. Binding resolutions, again, are resolutions of the type that are 100% within the power of the National Board to enact. Non-binding resolutions are typically advisory in nature. We kind of dub them as the wish list for contract talks.
Yes, and the National Board is to save them for consideration during the next contractual discussions with the post office.
Mm-hmm. How many of those actually get talked about? We don't know because they aren't transparent in what they're negotiating.
Not as many as David Heather threw out at step 4.
Mm-hmm. Any new resolution that was not passed at a state convention may only be entertained by the delegates by suspending the rules under new business.
I submitted one to my state for allowing all carriers Table 1 or Table 2 to get the full COLA, which is listed in Article 9. And so in the section, the current language, I typed out the paragraphs that had to do with COLA. And I'm just going to read the top sentence or so. It says the basic salary schedules provided for in Table 1 and Step 15 of Table 2 of this agreement shall be increased by, and And what I did is, under the section for the change, I struck out the language of Table 1 and Step 15 of Table 2. And then struck the language of Steps 1 through 14 for the basic salary change provided for Table 2 of the agreement, completely removing that part, allowing for all carriers Table 1 or 2 to get the full COLA increase.
And the problem with that is, people at step one or table one will be against that. And I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either because it doesn't affect them.
The disparity of pay that it's the infighting that we've talked about between rural carriers and the craft.
Oh, yeah.
Just like our last conversation of how carriers that got an increase are fighting with carriers that got a decrease.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing. You have carriers that are increased over carriers that are decreased. And what we need to do, and it's the same thing as the conversations of people about raising the minimum wage. People are upset about raising the minimum wage when they make way more than minimum wage. But instead of being proud for people fighting for a higher wage, they're more apt to push down the people pushing for a higher wage instead of lifting them up. So that's why. It's because it's about me mentality, and we're here, unbiased, unfiltered. We're here for everybody. Doesn't matter if you went up, doesn't matter if you went down. We're here.
We have Table 1 and Table 2 carriers on this panel. And me, well, I'm your Table 4 RCA. But,
you're Table 3.
4. But, yeah.
4? Oh, yeah.
4.
I think Table 3 is PTS, right?
No, it's the RCAs that were hired in prior. So.
Oh, yeah, the ones that are supposed to go to Table 1 when they convert.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But not all of them. I have heard some that got hired in that small little area there between those dates that actually were Table 3 and then went full-time on Table 2.
Yeah, anyone hired between, I want to say November of 2010 and August of 2012 will go regular on Table 2. Anyone hired prior to that 2010 date will be Table 1. And then I also had went back and found pay charts dating back from March of 2013, and I used the Table 1 Step A versus Table 2 Step 1 at 40 hours evaluation. In 2013, the variance, the difference in pay was $5,426. The most recent pay chart I have in here was August 27th of 2022, and that was $8,369, and we know we've had a couple of pay increases since then.
Yeah, if I think I looked at it last, it was like $8,517 difference on the current pay chart between the Table 2 Step 1 and the Table 1 Step A. Well, that's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah,
it is.
Imagine what that could do for the Table 2 carriers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're looking at, in 10 years, that's $3,000 that they drop.
Yeah, and the separation continues to expand as you go up in pay increases.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
me as a Table 2, I won't reach that, and I won't reach Table 1 Step 12 until what, 15 I think it is.
Yeah, Step 15. But that's also the difference with the Table 1 for the first A, B, and C. There's 96 weeks between their step increases, whereas Table 2 is 52 weeks straight across the board.
Yeah, but it's 48 after that.
Yeah.
44.
44. Okay, my bad. I was off by 4 months.
Well, it's 96 weeks, 44, and then I think it goes down to 32 for a few of them. It ends up being 12 and a half to 14 to 13 years, somewhere in there.
Whereas
to
with,
hit step 12.
and with table 2,
Whereas
it's
with the table 2,
15 years.
15 years. No matter whether you're there, you know, and it's also, think about all the subs that have been working for 10, 15, 17, 20 years that come on and they automatically start at step 1.
And that's a pay
Yeah,
decrease.
and
I only was a
is-
sub for 3.5 years, and I took a pay decrease when I became a regular.
Yep.
this is 2023. It's only been 10 years since Table 2 was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
So you still don't have any carriers at step 15 yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll have 8 years and 9, possibly 10 months.
Yeah, and you're going to see nothing for those 8.5 years.
Nope.
So,
And that,
James,
folks,
it's funny
it
you
takes
said
a
that.
legislative change, unfortunately.
Yeah.
yeah.
When James says you became a regular, lost money, it's like we just had a young lady convert to regular, and she goes, "I'm making less now." And I said, "Yeah, that's the post office for you." And she goes, "How could that be?"
Well, I will admit part of that is all my benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is my retirement, my insurance, and all that stuff. Because when I converted, the only option for insurance was the NRLCA,
Right.
and it was expensive at the time for me. So I wasn't going to go on the NRLCA insurance. And then when I converted, immediately got insurance. I got the retirement, dental, and all that other stuff. On top of my dues
Dental and
increase.
vision you could have gotten as an RCA.
Yeah.
Unless they changed it, because I had it, and I still have the same plan I had when
I didn't want to pay their prices. So when I finally converted, I had that expense added on. I had my retirement insurance and stuff added on. My dues went up because RCAs pay less in dues than regular carriers.
Right. Yep.
So a lot of that was just deductions coming out of my paycheck, but it also was the fact that I was no longer working 50, 60 hours a week like an RCA. I was working my 5 days a week, taking my NS days. I'm lucky I'm in an office that I don't have to work my NS days. But there are carriers that go straight onto the floor and they have to work their NS days.
Mm-hmm.
Even before every one of them got dropped to an H route. So
well, I lucked out, with the pay. I didn't lose any pay because I was only working 3 days a week before I went regular. So it ended up working out to about the same for me after all the deductions and everything.
yeah, when I became top sub, I was working 6 days a week. I got lucky. I was running routes all week, and I never had to work an Amazon Sunday. But at the same time, that's still 6 days a week. That's a lot of hours as an RCA, and of course, I never got a valuation because of it, so I lost money on that. But I was still making more than I am as a regular now.
Right.
Even I'm almost to year 3, and I'm still not making as much as I was as a sub on table 2. But that's what we take when we decided to have this job opportunity, to have these benefits.
Yep.
Unfortunately, but with resolutions, we can maybe change that.
That's the hope.
This one actually is for the current situation kind of we're in, with routes going way super overburdened. It comes actually from a situation in my own office, which is why I wrote it in the first place, but it actually is also for the carriers that are way over 48K. So when I wrote it, I wrote it, if you look at a resolution form, I wrote it for 2023 State Convention as a non-binding under salary and work rules and time standards. I didn't know which one it actually specifically fell under, which they will fix in the resolutions committee. It's under the national contract because it's part of the contract. Article 30, Section 1, Paragraph J. I wrote out the present language. J, carrier's rights to route adjustments. The regular rural carrier assigned to the route shall be notified in advance of any route adjustments and afforded the opportunity to submit comments in writing. The comments will be considered as a factor when such adjustments are under consideration and before any decision is made. Substantial route adjustments must be approved at a level higher than the installation and, if requested in writing, will be reviewed at the district level, except for adjustments to avoid actual work hours in excess of 2080 during the guarantee period. Now, I put be it resolved or proposed language, I put the language. And through this, I switched out, I added the word primary. So the comments will be considered as a primary factor when such adjustments are under consideration. And I included after the guarantee period, I included the rural carrier or a union designee at request of the carrier must be present for the adjustment, and the carrier must sign off to approve the adjustment before the adjustment will be made. Any discrepancies will result in an adjustment meeting between the union district representative and district management. No adjustment will be made prior to resolution. The intent of reason for change. Many routes have been documented as having an adjustment done that was arbitrarily made without regard to the carrier or local management's input. These adjustments have resulted in loss of pay or mileage to carriers or have not made logical sense. Putting the carrier first in route adjustments and requiring a sign-off will help stave off many issues arising from individuals who aren't knowledgeable in the area or route from making changes to routes without proper input. The reason I put this one forward and the thought process behind it is a route in my office was heavily overburdened to the tune of 12 hours. He had so many new houses put into the trailer park, new boxes put into the trailer park, that his route just exploded. Now, we submitted an area of removal with concurrence with local management that would have literally adjusted his route to a 43K, no problem. That was submitted to a district representative editor out of another post office. He was a postmaster in another office, but he's the district guy for adjusting routes. And he turned around, cut a completely different section off the route, cut more boxes and miles off the route than were necessary, and has literally turned the route from a K route to almost an H route. And that was before the count. They listed it as a 43K, but this carrier is getting in and getting out and getting done by noon every day with his route. And that's not fair. That carrier should be adjusted to 43K as per the contract, but we can't prove he wasn't because they say it's a 43K until his count, because we haven't had counts since 2018. But I want to take it out of district's hands in so much that they can just arbitrarily take off whatever they want. The other side of it is I did hear of a route that got cut and put on another route, and instead of taking a part that was near the route they were putting it on, that carrier has to drive practically this guy's entire route to go do a small section at the end of his route. It doesn't make logical sense. So having carrier and local management input is the best way we can logically and soundly make efficient cuts to routes. Thoughts?
I like it. And, it makes sense. I think if and when they fully implement the LTM and GPM to be able to start doing that, it in theory should do that automatically.
I hope so, but I also look at it this way as a computer guy. You can take all that information that the Postal Service collects for these routes. They know every address that gets every letter, flat, and package.
Right.
They can assign an exact time amount to each box, and we already have an exact time amount thanks to the mapping of the distance between boxes and things like that. So it wouldn't be too difficult to accurately cut a route with LTM and GPM. But it's a government program. It was made by the cheapest people they could find. So the fact, if it can even do that, would be a surprise to me.
But, we've talked about that before. But yeah, I think that'd be a great idea to be able to have not just carrier input, taken in consideration.
Just as a suggestion.
Right. To actually have them, kind of involved.
Yeah, because it's their route. They know that route. They drive that route.
They cut the furthest part off and gave it to a route that was on the on the opposite side of their route. So now the second carrier has to drive through their territory for maybe 100 boxes. And then drive back to get back to their route.
Yep.
Or, like Bill has discussed in the past, the one route you drive past the section by 3.5 miles, deliver some, come back to that section, 3.5 miles, deliver that small area, and then drive another 3.5 miles back to where the main part of the route is.
Yep. The one route I was talking about, it's got a trailer park on it, but they literally cut up the middle of the route and across the top of the route. It's one neighborhood. It's like 4 streets, but it's almost half his route. All those addresses, except the trailer park. I'm not counting the trailer park addresses. I'm counting it as one stop. But if you counted the rest of the boxes on his route, that's almost half the rest of his boxes.
Right.
Where they wanted to only cut a quarter of his boxes off. So that's why I'm putting this forward, and hopefully it'll get into the national contract. Management won't agree to it, but we could try.
I mean, that would fall in the lines of the route optimization plan that you hear so much about as well, too.
Well, that's what I was just saying.
Yeah,
but as long as there's as long as there's carrier input, even with the route optimization, that's what I'm looking at. We want more control. We want more control over decisions that affect us.
I've
got one concern about this is that, between the DPM, the LTM, and our breadcrumbs we've been laying for years and everything, if you're going to make an adjustment to a route, I want you to drive it. The reason being is that we've had adjustments done in our office. We have one route where the regional rural carrier specialist, who I won't name, but he's a piece of shit, know-it-all, has a carrier going by the same mailbox 3 times. He also has a route where you pass 124 carriage homes to drive, the rest of the route, which is a K48, come back to the 124 towards the end of it, and then drive 3.5 miles to do 2.5 streets, and then go back to the office. The only problem is that the 2.5 streets are crossed by 3 other routes. But his line of travel, is suspect because you pass the 124 carriage homes. There's another example where the carrier goes up and down one street and, ends up further away from the post office instead of closer to the post office at the end of her route because she's deadheading, for 2 cul-de-sacs, which she could make left-hand turns into. It's not illegal for you to make left-hand turns, especially when you have a clean line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's safer.
and it's cheaper for the post office. But, if the rural carrier specialist tells your supervisor who used to be a clerk and never carried mail in their life that, this is the way it is, they're not going to, go against them. They're afraid to. They're afraid of losing their jobs forever in the day. And I don't understand how people can live like that.
Listen, it's like when I first got my route, it had me going up and down the one street 5 times. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And I took two or 3 months, pulled it down differently, drove it, ran the route a few different ways until I found the most optimal way. Yeah, I lost some mileage, maybe a quarter or a half a mile each day, but at least the route was running fluently. I wasn't go down, turn in here, come out, go back up to the end of the road, come back down, go into that section, come back out, go back up to the beginning. It was crazy.
We have a route that this carrier decided to route it a specific way, and the way she routed it made it nearly impossible for it to be done in an efficient manner. And she starts off at a middle street, goes down to the lowest street, comes back and does the top street, then goes down and does a little side street off the lower side of the route, then goes back and does the businesses. She added like 12 miles to the route by doing this, just so that she could up her pay. I'm waiting for the LTM to go, nope, this isn't efficient, do it this way.
Well, will the LTM do that, though?
Well, the
It's
optimization part of it will, once they actually turn it on.
Supposedly. Remember our keyword, our drinking game word, supposedly.
Yeah.
North Carolina was going to be a pilot for that, and they put it to the wayside a while ago. So
Yeah, they're already having enough problems with the Rex all by itself. They can't do anything else at this point until that's solved.
Right.
Does anybody have any examples of a binding resolution?
Something for the constitutions.
Yes.
I turned around and I created a binding resolution for the national officers, because a lot of carriers feel that they're out of touch with what it means to be a rural carrier. So I did a binding resolution for the 2023 state convention based on the national constitution, whereas the national officers are away from the field, working tirelessly for the union at the national office. And the national officers are re-elected on occasion. National officers who are elected for multiple terms of office must return to their routes one day each year after their first year in office to observe how their route is being run, as well as how new procedures and processes agreed to by the national officer are affecting the carriers. This will include spending the entire day from start to finish. The national officer will coordinate with the district office of the USPS to ensure a vehicle is available on a government-assigned vehicle route. If the route is a POV route, it will be at the discretion of the carrier operating the route as to whether the national officer may ride along on the route with the carrier. This will not affect the carrier's hold-down status on the national officer's route. The national officer may also choose to spend the observation day with a carrier in an office at another district at least 100 miles away from the national office. The national officer must contact the carrier of that route to ensure they are welcome. The intent, reason for change? Some carriers may feel the national officers are not in touch with how routes are being operated on a daily basis. This will not only allow the national officers to observe how routes are being affected, but will also give the national officers a moment to interact with carriers at a local level. This will help provide insight and incentive for national officers to help bring positive change to the carriers who have elected them to national office. Thoughts?
I put their asses out there for a week. But that's me.
Well,
To be honest,
not
I was thinking about putting it out there that they had to visit 3 or 4 routes in different offices across the nation. But
that's
I was
what
I was
I would
thinking
have,
that
how
would
I would
be
have written it.
I was thinking that would probably be voted down on the fact that a lot of carriers wouldn't want the national officers to join them on their route, and the national officers would turn around and say, "Well, I tried 3 people, and they don't want me to ride with them," kind of thing. So I wanted to make it just once a year, go out there, see how it's actually being worked. I know they're doing a lot of work up at national office. A lot of people don't see it. A lot of people don't believe it. But
Sorry.
not a lot of people have ever been a president of a national organization either. They don't know what goes into it. So
I agree with you. Personally, I would write it as, 3 to 5 times a year, not necessarily their own route. Or 3 to 5 in different regions. Or one time per region, and they have to rotate which region they go to. So if they went to Atlantic this time, they have to go to Mid-States next time.
that's actually a really good idea.
That
mean,
way they
I would.
can see different perspectives
Areas?
from different carriers in different areas.
Well, that's where, this goes for all national officers, though, but, your
So you
NROs
have
have
3
their regions anyways. You have the 4 NROs.
Yeah.
And obviously they're going to be going back to, as a 4-year term, they could cover, a different state in their region each year. But I think a lot of this takes out in the past, the resolutions of going back have been, shot down basically because of that RCA going out of pay status because of that one day or whatever it is. And I think is doing it, like I said, as an observation or, an AKA a shadow day. Whereas that carrier is still, that RCA is still carrying that route. It's just they're basically doing a ride-along from start to finish. I think it also opens up the communication between the national board and those of us that have our feet on the ground.
And especially RCAs, which are our next generation of carriers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and everybody on the national board, the NROs and the national boards themselves, they travel around the country enough. to all the different conventions and functions and everything, that they could go and spend a day in a different area
Yes.
ahead of their scheduled meetings or after their scheduled meetings, and just visit one office every time they travel.
Yep.
I mean, that would be an eye-opening experience to see how all the different offices work that way.
And I think whatever area they're going to, they need to go to the highest problem offices.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Those
that
offices
could actually be its own
that you
separate.
have, these offices that you have these carriers on the convention floor literally in tears because of the way they're being treated in their office. And we've all heard it throughout the years. You always get at least 1, 2, 3, half a dozen of them, basically, in tears talking about how poorly treated that they are in those offices.
And they're begging.
And begging for help. And so why can't those be the first targeted offices?
Why can't we have a dedicated number to call at our national office to inform them of problem offices? I talk about that one postmaster that I didn't get along with, and she hated my guts because I wouldn't take her crap. What if I could call up to national office and say, hey, I was placed in this office temporarily, and the way this postmaster is treating her carriers is something the national office should look into. Mm-hmm. And maybe getting that eyes on the ground could be a way to get them to look at fixing our issues that we have. We were talking about other podcasts, and I was listening to others, and our city carriers are having the same problem. Mm-hmm. They have offices that they have tons of problems with, and tons of problems with management, and they're complaining that nobody's listening to them from their national level, just like we are. And I don't care whether you are a rural carrier or a city carrier or even a contract carrier. You are my brother and sister of the Postal Service. If you're a clerk, you're a brother or sister of the Postal Service. We all work together for the same job. Mm-hmm. And we're all fighting the same fight against management.
Now, not all managers are bad. I mean, there is that small percentage that are pretty awesome. I've been lucky enough to work under a few of them, but I've had my share of not so great management as well. And then, you'll hear coworkers complain about management, and I can just sit there and be like, what we have here is nowhere near as bad as what some have.
Right.
But I really think something like this, not only, it gets the union in on the floor of those problem offices, but it also opens up the communication between the office level employees and the national board.
It gives exposure to the union in those offices, especially in the bad offices where they feel like the union's forgotten them. In the offices where they feel like the steward system is not working the way it should be. Things like that. Getting those national officers to take a look is what I want to do with this resolution. I just want them to take a look. Because if you haven't actually carried mail in a while, you don't know the job we're doing now. You weren't here for Amazon. You weren't here for Rex. You worked on it, but you don't know how it works on the street. Get out there, get on the street, see how it works. See how much of a problem it is for carriers. See how we can fix it.
Learn how the scanners actually work.
Yeah.
Learn how a scanner actually works.
Don't write about it. Do it.
Yeah, any scanner. I don't care if you can type 70 words a minute or you use one finger to type every letter. You should know how the job you are defending works.
in the present.
Yes.
Yes.
Not how it was when you were carrying, but in the present.
It's if you haven't even seen DPS, but you're trying to tell people that, taking DPS to the street's a good way to save time in the office, you're way out of touch. Some carriers will tell you it is. Some carriers will tell you it isn't. Again, preference.
Well, I am all for casing, but taking it to the street does save office time because you're grabbing it, you're throwing it in your vehicle, and going. So you don't have to worry about being in the office, sorting through it, or anything.
Flipping it to the right direction, pulling out your errors, things like that.
Yeah, you just toss
Right.
You do
Joe
that
at
on the
box.
street. Yeah. Once you've cased it, or like I do, you pull down into your DPS, which is basically casing it. You just throw and go as you hit each box, versus what you're supposed to do when you take DPS to the street is drive up to the next box, stop, finger through the mail, find the errors, pull them out, then throw it in the box. Drive to the next box, stop, finger through the mail, put it in the box. With the throw and go method, you pull up to the box, you grab the next handful, throw it in, and you go.
Well, you're still supposed to verify when you're at the box.
Oh, yeah.
But if you've already gone through it, or like I do,
I
I
was
flip
just going
flop.
to say, however, if you've cased it and pulled all the errors and you have it, each address separated properly, there's not as much of a need to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
I am going to,
regardless.
if I can't get some of these files uploaded into the Facebook group, it's been telling me unable to upload for the last couple of days, I will, since I got my Dropbox back up and running, I will put a folder together and share a link for the Dropbox that will have the resolution presentation that I have that was made available to me. I'll put that in there, as well as some example resolutions. That way, if people want to see that and have an idea how the resolution is actually written out, and we'll get that in the Dropbox, and I'll put a link up for the Dropbox so they can access that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, does anybody else have another resolution they want to put forward that for an example? Bill, I know you got some good ones.
Actually, no. I don't have any for this year. Our meeting's next Wednesday, and I've been, swamped between trying to move, son's wedding, and all the grievances from the Rex that, I haven't put my mind to resolutions at all this year. The thing of it is that earlier you said about, working together, it's not a resolution for one, or most people don't understand the concept of the union. It's for the whole, not for the individual. Mm-hmm. We protect the individual, but you're part of a collective. And this is why we're so fractured as a union, because we have, the retirees at the convention. We have the NSS at the convention. We have everybody but the regular carriers at the convention. You have all your state officers there. Nobody there is representing the regular carriers.
We are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, but we're the minority, okay? And it's easier to stay with status quo than to say, you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe we could do things differently.
With our silent partners, we make 10 people, and that's only 10 people in a room of 1,000.
Yeah.
Or two.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this out there. I've kind of brought this up to a couple of the co-hosts, but I'm going to put this challenge out for everybody. And I've said it a few times. When you only have 20% of the membership that votes for anything, whether that's voting for your national delegates or voting for a contract resolution, when only 20% is voting, that's, 15 to 20,000 people out of 100,000 people. When only 20% is voting, and it's the same people that are voting for the same people, you're going to get the same results. I want to kind of put this out there for those that, putting yourself out there as a state delegate for state convention is fairly easy. I don't know of a lot of local units that actually fill all of their delegate positions at the state level. That definitely would be a first step. National delegates, every member gets a ballot to vote for their state's national delegates. Take a look at those names. A lot of people that do vote by name recognition. I want to kind of pose a little challenge. Yes, you're going to have to do some homework. But if you go to the NRLCA website and you go to the National Conventions tab, you can download the proceedings from the past conventions. Take a look at those. If you have to skim through to where we get to the important nit and gritty, that's literally word for word that goes on at the convention floor, for the most part, unless something is stricken from the record, but we won't get to that right now. Take a look at that and see the people that actually step up to the mic as a delegate, and see if these are the people that you want fighting for you. If what they have to say is something that you agree with or don't agree with, and make, notes of names. And then when you get your delegate ballots, vote accordingly to how you feel. You see names on there you don't recognize. A lot of people are on social media. Go in and look their name up on Facebook if you can and see, are they an RCA? Are they somebody? There's a lot of people in a lot of groups. You can reach out. You can find people that, hey, do you know who so-and-so is? And vote accordingly. I would like to see more people vote for national delegates. That's how you're going to eventually get a change, is getting new delegates on the floor. Am I correct, guys?
I'm going to say this. More people turn out, percentage-wise, for a vote for governor and president than people do in the NRLCA to vote for their delegates. Yep. It's honestly appalling to think that only 20% of our union is voting for people to make a choice for you.
And
now,
I would like to see some resolutions about the unpopular but popular theory of one member, one vote. And I know I've seen a few people mention this recently. It can be done. That would take a constitutional change. That would be a binding resolution for a one member, one vote. NALC does it. APWU does it. They send out their ballots to every member to vote for their national board.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a good one.
It is very possible. You would need, and this is another thing, if you have more people in different states submitting these, or any type of resolution, y'all can put your heads together. I know, we all talk, we're all on social media. Yep. Of getting these together. So if it doesn't pass at one state, but 3 states pass it, well, now you have 3 states submitting the same resolution at national. Or more. You know what I mean? If it doesn't pass one, it's going to pass somewhere else down the road. That's where building up the momentum comes in. Is getting the more of those people that have the same thought process, have the same concerns, and want to see similar changes, y'all need to start putting the effort in. Being the keyboard warrior is not going to make the change. Voting the right delegation in will make a bigger change than just playing the keyboard warrior or leaving the union.
Speaking of keyboard warriors, you can actually go into the groups, each Facebook group, and actually search the names on your ballot.
Yep.
If they're in that group, it'll actually pull up conversations, comments that they've made on posts. It'll pull up posts they've made. You can actually get an idea of how they think just by how they post on social media. Because a lot of them think in social media that people aren't going to fully recognize who they are, and they're going to put forth who they really are on social media to everybody. So you're going to get a better idea of how that person's going to vote when they become a national delegate for you. So be mindful of what's out there and what they're saying about things and how they say it.
As it gets closer to national delegate ballots going out, which will probably be coming up into May here shortly, I will make a post in the Facebook group, and I will, under the comments section, have each state represented, and those that are putting their names on the ballot as a national delegate, you will be open to put your comment underneath your state to put your name on there. So you get some sort of recognition, at least within that group. I know a couple other groups have done it in the past, and I think it's been done on the Royal Mail Talk forums. It's a start of getting your name out there. That's the whole thing, is getting your name out there so people know who you are and know where your priorities lay when it comes to what we want to see in the future. But yeah, definitely the first step of seeing any type of change on a national level is getting the proper delegates voted in to that convention floor.
And on the other side of that, if you want to step up and be a delegate, it's in your state papers for your state convention.
Yep.
Nationals in the national paper. You get the magazines from the union. Any union member can run to be a delegate. You can put yourself forth. You can have a friend put you forward. Either or. If you want to step up and actually be a delegate, and you are elected a delegate, your state has to pay for you to go to be that delegate.
Yeah, but every state and how they pay change is different, so I'm not sure. I can't say how that. You would have to talk to your state association to know how that works. But it's out there.
For me, I go to conventions, and sometimes my county supports me going.
Mm-hmm.
They actually pay for me to go as a representative of the county. So that's another option, is if you're going to your county meetings, you could possibly be picked to go to, like for Kristen and me, mid-states, and be supported by your county, so it's not as big of an expense for you. Mid-states for me is 14 hours away. Kristen is, 16?
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. So my county is actually going to cover that expense on top of my hotel room and food and things like that. It doesn't cover everything, granted, because they're going to be other expensive.
My county doesn't cover that. My state, on the other hand, because I did not get moved up, I was an alternate delegate at the last national, and I did not get bumped up to delegate while we were there. So our state, luckily, the first 10 alternate delegates from national, if they did not move up, are then paid to go to mid-states. So I was second in line. So I will get some sort of reimbursement at the end when I get back, but I will have to pay everything out of pocket up front. Last year, I was not paid to go to mid-states, and I went on my own. National, I was not a paid delegate. I was an alternate. My state does not pay alternates. I paid for national out of my own pockets. But you can be an RCA and be a delegate. You can be an RCA and you can run for state board. You can run for local board. And yes, as an RCA, you can even run for national board. Been there, done that. So, it's not just regular carriers. RCAs can be involved just as much. I mean, you can be on your local board. I have done that in the past. You can be on your state board. And you can potentially run for national board. And if they like you, who knows what could happen. But, again, it's getting the right delegation into the system and on that floor to make any type of change. Anything else to add, guys?
I was going to say, in regards to what you were saying about, getting paid or reimbursed, a couple years ago, North Carolina, for the first, instituted at the state level, they pay their state delegates. My local district also, which is $100 a day for the 3 days of business at $300. And then my district, we've elected to put up $500 split evenly amongst all district or all delegates that go to the state convention. So between the two, it covered most of the expenses, not all, but most of our expenses. And that's something at the at your local meetings, if they don't already have something, you can bring that to the floor as something to be voted on, depending on what your local district budget is.
And if money is an issue when it comes to going to these things, especially with hotel rooms and whatnot, room with people. You don't have to room with people from your own state. I mean, we had 4 of us last year, 2 from North Carolina, 1 from Florida, and myself from Michigan, sharing a room, splitting the tab. I mean, that's out there. I mean, I have an extra bed available for Mid-State, so if anybody's interested in going still, and you want to split a cost of a hotel, let me know. It's just me now. My traveling buddy, unfortunately, is no longer with the post office, so I'm going. If you want to split a room, I'm putting it out there. I'm sharing a room with my regular from my first office for state convention and possibly for national. I haven't, that was initial plans, but if it comes out that more people need, roommates or whatnot, we'll figure it out. It's, get a traveling buddy. And if you want to go just to go, national this year is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you want to go, even if it's only for a couple days, you don't have to be, you can register to go as an attendee. You obviously at that time, you don't have voting rights as a non-delegate, and basically you're there observing for the most part. But you can register to go as an attendee, as a non-delegate, and just see what goes on in the convention floor and see how things are, and, take mental notes. That is always the option. The same goes for state conventions, too. You don't have to be a delegate to be there. You can be there and see what goes on. And, then like, all right, I don't like how this went. Maybe I'll be a delegate next year and submit something and try to change it. You don't have to be a delegate to submit a resolution. You can submit a resolution at your local level and it get passed up to state, and if you can't make it, it'll still get presented to the floor from the resolutions committee.
Yep, mine did.
Yes, yours got presented at national. Yes, and you were...
I was a non-delegate at my state convention. I spoke with our now Director of Labor Relations and asked if she could help me by suspending the rules in new business so that a non-delegate could present a resolution. And I actually stood up and presented my resolution, and they passed it on the floor right there, right after I presented it. And it went on to national. I didn't go to national. It was still presented.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So,
it failed there, but
yeah.
I'm too wordy, apparently. I talk too much.
But there is ways of being involved without being there in person at times as well. You are protected under Article 24 of the contract for leave pertaining to union business. So if you will put in a leave slip and management wants to say this, that, or another, take a copy of Article 24 with you, because that's always a fun one. And you don't have to abide by... That's
difficult for officers that have no subs.
It is. But also, the union feels that you should be able to submit union leave, whatever, practicables. So that is outside of the 60 days.
Yeah.
So you can give them a heads up outside of 60 days to find somebody to cover your route for you.
And they have 3 business days to get it back to you. Close of business from the close of business on the day you submit it. 3 days later, they have to get it back to you, approved or denied. And the denied reason cannot just be needs of service or anything else. It has to be a actual specific reason why they're denying it. And in union business is the exception to the 60 days, because a lot of times you've already paid for a hotel room and things like that, which is one of the reasons that you can put in for more than 60 days out. Union business is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But we're going to wrap up tonight. Like I said, I'm going to try and get files. If Facebook doesn't want to let me upload them, I will get things organized in a Dropbox folder and get that link put up for everybody, so they have a chance to kind of get in there and see. And then I'll have some examples of past resolutions, whether or not they passed or not. I'll go in and edit them and set them up as examples and block out names and information and all that good stuff. So we're not having to worry about the repercussions of that getting put out there. But you guys got anything else you want to end with?
I'm saying this union is for everybody. Dues paying, non-dues paying. If you are a non-dues paying member, we want you to participate. If you just can't in your heart join the union, but you want to help the union out and get a resolution put forward, find a union person in your office that participates. Offer it to them. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to help you put that forth in the contract.
And if you have one of those offices where nobody participates, even if they're union members, reach out to somebody in your state. Like I said, that's where social media can come in handy. You know, I get some people, especially some table tours, and there are a few table oneers out there that just cannot afford that extra deduction out of their paycheck. It's not that they don't want to, it's just they can't afford it. Whatever their personal, everybody's personal situations are different. I totally get that, and I totally respect that. But, there are means and ways. I mean, if you have an idea for a resolution, definitely, and you are unable to do it because you unfortunately can't afford the dues, get with somebody within your state that is willing to help you out.
And worst case scenario, if you need to, reach out on our Facebook group.
Definitely.
Our Facebook group has a bunch of people that want to participate and want to be involved. And if you don't have the means, reach out and say, hey, I have an idea for a resolution. I'm from this state. Is there anybody here from that state that can help me with it? And reach out that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. The door is open. I mean, if you're in one of our states, reach out to one of us as well. That door is open to everybody. So, Bill, do you got anything else for tonight?
You go back and like James was saying about, union and non-union, we're all part of the same craft. My office, I share information equally because of the fact that if one route gets harmed by not knowing anything and somebody bids on it and they're in the union and the previous carrier wasn't, then, skadoosh, you know, they get screwed. We have an overburden. Well, hell, I'm an overburden route at 63.46 hours, but you know, we had an overburden route that had a PTF on there and a quasi hold down situation because we had nobody else, and now we have another sub in there, and he calls out, the mail gets backed up, and then you know people have to go over and help and clean it up. I mean, you know, that's part of it. We have a new PTF came in from outside. And on Saturday, he went into a route blind, and everybody who knew that route pitched in to help him, you know, get it all done. And he was like, "Oh my God, this office is great." I said, "Well, wait till you have to deal with management, okay?" and he goes, "Are they that bad?" And I says, "Yeah," but I'm worse. So yeah, you're okay. He goes, "Yeah, well, you know, the other carriers at the last office were bad." Well, I'm starting to get suspicious because this guy's been at 5 different offices already.
Oh, wow.
You know? Now, the worst thing is that he goes into a route blind and does it under evaluation. I mean, does something stink here, or is it just me? Or does something stink here and it is me?
Well, it's definitely you.
Okay.
I wasn't going to say that. Thank you for chiming that in.
That's, you know, you can't hurt my feelings. I don't have any.
You know, it's like at my office, one of my resolutions that I'm putting forward actually came from one of our RCAs that is a non-dues paying member. She wanted to see a change, and she asked me if we could do something about it. And I offered and said, hey, if you want to, you can join the union. She can't afford to. So I offered to put forth a resolution for her.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do.
That's what we gotta do.
How we do it as a union.
Well, yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you know if you don't help the weakest link,
you become the weakest link.
Yes, the whole union does.
Yes.
So, you know, build people up. Don't tear them down.
Support each other.
Yep.
Josh, you have anything else for this evening?
Pretty much the same sentiments as the rest of you guys. I would say, like always, don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Take a step back, take a breath, step back in. Like everyone else said, if you have an idea that you think might help and you just can't figure it out, reach out to someone who is involved or you think is involved that, or is at least knowledgeable, that could help you put it into words that would be a working resolution to be submitted.
On that note, guys, like I said, we're here for you, and I will try and get that information out. Give me a couple days. I'm back to running 2 routes today. Well, today and tomorrow, and then I go into OJI status for the next few days. So give me a few days. Hopefully by the first of the week I will have the resolutions up and ready for everybody. So on that note, everybody have a good night, and we'll be back on our regular episode on Sunday.
Nighty night.
Night all.